Good morning. It's a great pleasure and an honor to be here with you today. The task given to me by Dieren when we talked about the subject of my presentation was to look a bit further than Ray has looked right before me. He's presented a short-term view of what is happening in the next season or so. And I was tasked with looking forward until about the year 2020. Of course, there are many elements in my analysis that are going to be common with what Ray has discussed. But let's see what the perspectives are looking a bit further. Just as a side note, when I was thinking about what the title of my presentation was, my first reaction was to call it Outlook 2015-2020, but I think that word has already been taken and is not copyrighted in the world of cotton, so I chose to call it Prospects. Anyway, so the presentation was divided into four parts. First, supply, which will be further subdivided into production, stocks, and the question of government assistance. Second will be trade. Third, mill-use, consumption. And we'll end talking about prices. Now, how did we get to where we are today? This chart shows world production and consumption since 1998-99. And for the first 10 years of this period, 12 years of this period, you can see that production and the consumption are very closely aligned to each other. Cotton reacts very fast to price signals, and supply and demand adjust very easily. Now, for the last 5 years, for reasons which we all know, this has not been true. The world prices have been substantially above the long-term average and have encouraged production far above the immediate use. And we have accumulated in these last 5 seasons more than 13 million tons of cotton. Now, going back to the question of the reaction of production and especially area to prices, here you can see the planted area of cotton in relation to the prices, the Cotlook index of the previous season, which determines a grower's planting decisions. And you see how the two are very closely intertwined, and how the area under cotton has fluctuated somewhere between 30 and 36 million hectares throughout the recent past. Another important factor in planting decisions are the prices of competing crops. And here you see the 5 most important competing crops for cotton: maize, soybean, wheat, rice, and sugar, and their evolution in the recent past. And the red bars, which are the most recent year, 2014, you can see that they are all above the previous year. So the competing crops are still highly attractive to growers, and there's no incentive on that side, at least, for increasing the area under cotton. Here are the main producing countries, the last 3 crops, the Northern Hemisphere. I think the most important factor there is the fact that India has overtaken China this year as the world's largest producer, somewhere around 6.8 million tons in our estimate, compared with China falling to about 6.4. Also, the US recovering after with a more favorable climate. And in the southern hemisphere, where the lower prices are starting to affect planting decisions in the 2014-15 season. There you can see some reductions already in planting, especially in Brazil, Australia also, but that is also due to climatic considerations. So in the southern hemisphere, you start to feel the effect of lower prices of cotton. In the question of production, I think the biggest challenge that we all face is increasing yields, and this is a particular challenge for India. Here, this graph shows yields in India and in the rest of the world. And India now is around 550 kilos per hectare, while the rest of the world, even if you include lower yield producers, is around just over 900 kilos per hectare. So India has a lot of catching up to do, a lot of improvement to do, and I look forward to the next session, which will bring together some distinguished researchers, all of which have received the ICAC Researcher of the Year award, to get their views on how we can really improve yields in cotton, and especially in India. Now, the consequence of this surplus of production over demand in the last 5 years, you can see the steep climb in world ending stocks from a low of 8.6 million tons in 2009-10 to our estimate for the end of this season, 21.6 million tons. And as Ray just discussed, much of this is due to the growth of the China National Reserve, starting from very low levels in 2011 and now to somewhere around 11.4 million tons today. And how does this express itself in terms of the stock-to-use ratio, which I think is the most important measure of how the stocks affect the market? Stocks-to-use ratio at the end of the 14-15 season is estimated around 0.88, or in other words, we almost have 1 year of consumption in-house, in warehouses. And you can see in this graph also the division between China and the rest of the world. Most of the growth in the past few years has been in China, but this will change. And this is our estimate of stocks outside the China National Reserve. This includes private stocks in China, so it includes some Chinese stocks. But you can see that the ratio will now be somewhere around half a year's usage, and a steep increase in the current year from around 8 million to 12 million tons. And let's talk briefly about we have seen how the question of government assistance or government intervention in markets has been important in the run-up of stocks. This is our estimates of total government assistance to cotton from all producing countries. And I think there are several important points to be made from this chart. One is, if you look at the bars are the value in billions of dollars of the assistance, and the red line is prices, the Kotluk A index. And you can see that, at least historically, the trend has been for government assistance to decline when prices are high, and to rise when prices are low. This makes total sense. You want to assist your farmers when the prices are unfavorable. But during the last 3-4 years, we have seen a disconnect from this historical reality, and we have seen a high level of support, but coupled with high prices. So, and this is the cause of the situation we have today with all these high stocks. Now, moving on to the question of trade. Ray talked about how over time the imports of China are going to be restricted. His estimate for this year is lower than ours. We are a bit less conservative. We think there will be, in addition to the tariff-free quota, there will be other imports, somewhere around 2 million tons from China, but it doesn't really change the macro situation. Imports are going to decline somewhere like 8 million tons this year, and are not likely to rise significantly in the time frame that we're talking about until 2020. Exports, here you have the behavior of exports in last season, 13-14, and our estimates for the 14-15 season. A big drop in India and Australia, a slight rise in the USA, although this may change with the effects of the recent news coming out of Geneva from the WTO. But this is our best estimate at this point. The rest of the leading exporters essentially unchanged. Now moving on to consumption, cotton mill use. We saw that it reached a high in the 2007-2008 season when it reached 26.7 million tons. After that, the world suffered the Great Recession of 2008, and immediately following these high prices caused by the Chinese government policies have really depressed demand for cotton. So cotton today is around, our estimate for this season is a growth of about just over 3%. We do believe that the low prices will encourage a greater demand for cotton. And going forward until 2020, a little lower. Our estimates are around the 2% range. But you see the result of all this is that in 2020, we will be at 26.6 million tons, which is back where we were at 2007, 2008. So we have more than a lost decade, lost 12, 13 years there in terms of increase in cotton consumption. And in terms of leading countries, we foresee some recovery in China as a result of the competitive prices. India also continuing to grow, but the rest of the leading consuming countries more or less stable. So this will make it harder to find alternative markets for exports. And now looking into the competition with other fibers, this graph presents the 4 most important fibers, with cotton, the white area at the bottom. And you can see that from 1960 to today, cotton has grown, but at a very low rate. And the increase in fiber usage has really been concentrated in the non-cellulosic sector, polyester. Now, how will this play out in the future, this competition between cotton and polyester? The prices are converging now. They are in a much healthier situation than they have been in the last 3 years. Cotton is much more competitive with polyester, but we have to bear in mind that there's a massive overcapacity in the polyester sector. The price of oil is falling. So we can really not expect cotton to compete just on price. And I'm very glad that the organizers of this conference have seen to fit to include a whole session on the question of promoting demand for cotton. This is a subject that is very dear to my heart. I think just on price alone, we are not going to be competitive, and I look forward to being here and seeing the conclusions of the experts on this panel. One important factor when we look at this question of demand going forward and promoting cotton is that the behavior of consumption is very different in developed countries and developing countries. Developed countries account for more or less 40% of world demand, and here the market share of cotton is more or less stable, around 43%, 42, 41%. But it is in the developing countries where our real problem lies. And from a high of almost 50% in the year 2000, we have dropped steadily and are somewhere around 26% today. So any promotion efforts really have to be focused and target the developing countries. And India is definitely a prime market, a prime target for these promotion efforts. The per capita consumption of cotton in India is still very low, even if you compare it with countries of a similar cultural background and similar income per capita. The consumption of India is very low, and I think there's a great opportunity to try and grow the internal market here in India. And as we approach the end of my presentation, looking a bit at prices. Long term, you see all these fluctuations around the 75 cents per pound mark up to the end of the 1990s. Lower prices during the first decade of the millennium, and then the recent spike, now a fall, but still you can see that the prices we have had in the recent past are much above the long-term historical average, and we should bear this in mind when we complain or look at the current price levels. Our econometric model today predicts that the average price for this season will be around 75 cents per pound. That's the midpoint of a range which goes from 89 cents per pound at the top and 64 cents at the bottom. And the result of all these different movements is our expectation is that cotton's market share, although in absolute terms we will be improving until 2020, the other fibers will still grow at a faster rate, and from the 28% market share that we have today, this will decline slightly to 26% in 2020. Now, just to wrap things up then, supply, we have seen that the production is fully capable of meeting the current demand. In 2011-12, world production reached just over 27 million tons, which is our prediction for consumption to reach after 2020. So production is fully capable of meeting demand. In addition to that, you have the stocks that are hanging over the market. They're equivalent to almost 1 full year of demand, and we do not see any significant great reduction in the next 5 years. So the market is covered against supply-side shocks. In terms of trade, with the reduction of demand, exports will fluctuate in a range between 7.5 and 8 million tons. Consumption recovering as cotton prices become more competitive with man-made fibers, although there are limits to this recovery. And the cotton's share of the market, the fiber market, will continue to erode. In terms of prices, we will return to this long-term average of around 70 cents per pound. Very limited upside potential in the next 5 years, and the downside potential is a little attenuated by the government policies in various countries that, as prices go down, and you're starting to see this in India, governments are stepping in to support their growers. So this is our outlook for the next 5-6 years. I think some might even consider this an optimistic scenario, a best case scenario, but this is where we are today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose Zete. As you tell that in long run, yes, production in the world of cotton is able to take up with the demand, but currently, as you all listen, the price future outlook for the year, it may average price may be 75 cents, so, and the maximum average may go to 89 cents. Now, calling to next speaker, Dr. Terry Townsend, is a consultant on commodity issues. He is currently working with the ACTIF, African Cotton and Textile Industries Federation. He served as an executive director with ICAC for about 14 years, that is from 1999 up to 2013. He worked at a US State Department of Agriculture for 5 years in the 1980s, analyzing the US cotton industry and editing a magazine devoted to a cross-section of agricultural issues. He joined ICAC in 1987 as a statistician and was promoted to executive director in 1999. He has a PhD in agricultural and resource economics from Oregon State University in the United States. So, Dr. Terry Townsend.
Okay, thank you very much. It's an honor to be on a panel with Ray Butler, successor Joseph Sete, and of course Mr. Mishra, a good friend at CCI. I'm honored to be invited here. I want to draw your attention first to just this chart produced by ICAC. It shows now that the chart is up there, draw your attention to this information provided by the International Cotton Advisory Committee, or ICAC, which shows in billions of dollars the situation with government measures in last season, 2013-14. Shows that in round numbers, the government of China provided about $5 billion in support to its cotton producers. The United States government provided around $500 million. Turkey also provided some support, Greece, Spain, and all other countries. He knows India is not even on this chart. Again, this is data from last season. The point of this chart is that when we're talking about government measures and the involvement of governments in the cotton market, overwhelmingly, China is the government that is affecting the market at this time. However, I will be talking first about the United States because the U.S. cotton program has changed the most. I'll talk secondly about China because, as this chart shows, China has been the most important country. And I'll talk third about India because not only are we in India, but it's the theme of my presentation is that India is going to become the country that will have the greatest impact on the world cotton market. So first, the United States. This chart starts in 1990. It's annual data in billions of dollars. And it shows in round numbers how much money the government of the United States has given to cotton production each year through the current season. And then the yellow part on the end showing what the forecasts are for what U.S. government support to the cotton sector is going to be. In the 1990s, support varied quite a bit depending on prices. There were years when there was no support at all, but other years in which support rose. Starting in the late 1990s and continuing through about 2008, government support in the cotton sector ranged between $2 billion and $4 billion a year. There were years in which farmers in the United States received more money from the government than they received from the market. As world market prices rose, starting in 2009, support dropped. That's the way the formulas had worked. And crucially, under the new cotton program called STAX, Stacked Income Support Program for cotton, under the new program, support is going to be far less than it has been, shown by that yellow line on the right-hand side of the chart. The government will be providing much less support to the cotton sector in the United States than has been the case in the past. I know there are a lot of numbers on this chart, and it's kind of hard to read, so I'll walk through it, and the presentation itself is on the website. It's important to understand in the context of the United States. In the past, the government program protected farmers from a decline in prices from one season to the next. So if prices had been 90 cents and fell to 60 cents from one season to the next, farmers would be protected. That is no longer the case. Under the new cotton program called STAX, which was just passed in February of this year, cotton farmers will only be protected from a decline in prices that occurs between planting and harvesting. So the fall in prices that is occurring this season is not going to affect in any way what farmers receive during 2015. So for example, you take an average county in the United States, cotton is produced in about 700 different counties. County is a unit of government, about 700 counties. In each county, a calculation is made. So let's take an average county, and in the United States, data are kept on a pounds per acre basis. So let's just assume you have a county where the average yield is 800 pounds of lint per acre. The expected county revenue based on the ICE futures in January 2015 might be 60 cents. That's where it was on, where it is now. Therefore, 60 cents times 800 pounds gives you an expected revenue of $480. Under the STAX program, the maximum support that will be given is 90% of that, or $432. The minimum support would be 70% of that, which would be $336. So the maximum amount of money that can actually be given to farmers in that county is the differential between $432 and $336, or in this case, $96. So that's the most any farmer, any cotton farmer in this hypothetical county could receive under the cotton program. Now, let's fast forward to the harvest time in 2015. Let's just assume that in this example, the market price, again defined by the ICE futures, market price has fallen to 50 cents, a decline of 10 cents a pound. And again, let's assume there was poor rainfall or whatever, and for whatever reason, the average yield in that county, rather than being 800 pounds, was 600 pounds. Now you've got 50 cents a pound times 600 pounds per acre. You have actual revenue in that county is only $300 per acre. Well, that's less than the minimum of 336 pounds. And so in this example, farmers would receive the maximum payout under STAX of $96 an acre. Now, there are innumerable combinations. Maybe yields go up, the price is down, or the price is up, the yield's down, maybe both go up or both down, whatever. The point is, the points are, excuse me, first of all, the decline in prices this season has no impact on the subsidy that cotton farmers in the U.S. will receive next season. The subsidy is calculated only between planting time and harvest time within each season. And the second point is, these subsidies are capped. The most they can be is roughly 20% of the expected revenue. So in the past, if the price went down far enough, you could get hundreds of dollars per acre in support. That will no longer be the case. STAX is in effect a government-supported hedging program. It will allow U.S. cotton farmers to go to the bank at planting time. They'll be able to pledge this potential payment to the bank as collateral, and it will enable banks to make loans on production loans to farmers. And that's what STAX will be doing. So, again, the bottom line, as the previous chart showed, is that subsidies are going to be a lot more. The second thing that's occurring in the United States, and has been going on for almost a decade now, is that the U.S. has biofuel mandates, ethanol. Most ethanol in the United States is made from corn because it has a relatively high sugar content. In the United States, corn, soybeans, and cotton are often grown in rotation, and so that they can be competitive. Farmers in states such as Mississippi or Georgia will shift land between cotton, corn, and soybeans depending on relative prices. This chart is annual data from the 1990s. It shows that from roughly 1990 to 2005, cotton accounted for 8% of the sum of acreage devoted to corn, soybeans, and cotton. Starting in 2006, which is when the biofuel mandates in the United States began, cotton's share of cotton, corn, and soybean acreage in the United States has been going down. In 2005, 3% of all the corn produced in the United States went to ethanol. Today, that's 47%, or half. All the corn produced in the United States goes to ethanol. So it's had a tremendous impact on the structure of prices in the United States. So corn and soybeans now are far more attractive to many farmers than cotton's. And cotton's share of this corn, soybean, cotton acreage is down to 4%. So cotton is becoming successively less competitive in the United States. Subsidies are coming down. It means that if you subsidize something less, you're going to get less of it. U.S. cotton production is headed low. Over the last decade, it's averaged 3.5 million metric tons a year. I believe it's going to be going down to 3 million tons on average over the next several years. In fact, in 2015, we may see a very large drop to less than 3 million tons. Change to China. China basically has two subsidy systems now in the eastern provinces. The subsidies given to cotton farmers would be 60% or most of the 60% of the subsidy provided in Xinjiang, no greater than roughly 15 cents a pound at current exchange rates. In Xinjiang, where most cotton now is produced, direct payments are split between land and production payments, just like they are in the European Union. Important point is that rather than intervening in markets by buying cotton through the state reserve and propping up prices, the government of China is going to be emulating what the European Union and the United States have been doing for decades, making direct payments to farmers and letting the market find its own level. China is a mountainous country. Only 7% of its land area is arable. It has a huge population, and so there's a lot of pressure in the eastern provinces to produce food rather than cotton. Xinjiang is the area best suited to cotton production. And so since 1990, the share of cotton production in Xinjiang has been rising and is now, Xinjiang alone accounts for more than half. With this new subsidy structure in place, where farmers in the east will get only 60% of the subsidy that's paid to farmers in Xinjiang, it's clear that this process of shifting from the east to Xinjiang is going to continue. I believe it's going to result in production in China trending lower. Production has been around 7 million tons. I believe over the next 5 seasons, production in China is going to trend lower, perhaps down to 5 million tons. So in both the United States, the biggest exporter, and in China, where historically has been the biggest importer, you're seeing declines in production, you're seeing reduced subsidies, and you're seeing a shift toward greater emphasis on market forces in determining the allocation of supply and demand. This is a chart with monthly data beginning in August 2011. The blue bars show what has actually happened, and then the whiter, lighter colored bars are showing what I think is going to be happening. They show the cumulative levels of cotton in the state reserve each month. The state reserve started out rather innocuously at a few 100,000 tons. By the end of the 11-12 season, the reserve was up to about 5 million tons. Then beginning in the harvest 2012, the reserve jumped again. It got up around 7 or 8 million tons and then fell as China was rotating stocks and supplying the market, its domestic mills. Then during harvest 2013, the reserve jumped again, got up around 12 to 13 million tons. During 13-14, toward the end of the season, the reserve began drifting down again. The expectation is that here in the 14 harvest, the reserve will climb a little bit to around 10 million tons, and then will start dropping. There's no policy pronouncement by the government of China. There's no explicit statement as to what they're going to do, just based on what they've done in the past, intuition, talks with academics in China, reading magazines, and so on. I think it's likely that China will allow its state reserve to decline, so not just rotate stock, but actually liquidate stock over the next 3 seasons. The state reserve by August 2017 will be around 6 million tons. That means an annual liquidation of about 2 million tons of cotton out of the state reserve. That would mean that implies that China's supply and use is going to look like this. Mill use has been high, trending down, as Ray was mentioning. There's yet no evidence that there's any great renaissance in interest of cotton by textile mills in China. And I think the proportion of cotton in total fiber use is going to continue to erode. with subsidies in eastern provinces limited and more cotton being produced in Xinjiang. Xinjiang itself limited by water, and production is going to trend down. And even though there will be a difference between mill use and production, that difference is going to be supplied out of the state reserve rather than through imports, and imports are likely to drop to little more than the level of the WTO commitment, around 1 million tons a year. So that was US, China. Now look at the world total. This is data from 2003-4. It continues forward. The point is that for 5 consecutive seasons, including 13-14, production has been above consumption. This is very unusual. Now, it's not unprecedented. We've had years like this back in World War II, for instance, where we went long stretches of time with production above consumption, but it's a very unusual situation. World ending stocks have climbed from 6 months or 50% of use, now at about 90% of use, or a little over 10 months of world use is in stock, with a lot of that, of course, in China. Long time series tells us that world stocks are at less than 6 months of use. Textile mills are nervous about supplies. They start bidding up prices because they're anxious to secure supplies through October, November, when the new crop becomes available. The stocks are about 6 months of use. The market is more or less in equilibrium. When stocks are greater than 6 months of use, that means, and this is data all based on the August-July international season, it means that more cotton is needed than, more cotton is available than is needed, and so textile mills and others just aren't willing to take as much cotton on as exporters want to sell, and prices start to drop. A point that both Ray and Josie made that I want to emphasize, in 2015-16, even if we have a tremendous drop in production of 10%, so rather than 26 million tons, let's say we produce around 23 million tons in 15-16. And even if we have a tremendous, would be a very unusual increase in consumption in 2015-16, from 24 million tons up to 25 million, even in a situation like that, we would still have a very large stocks overhang. Even if in 2015-16 production plummets, consumption rises, stocks, world stocks are reduced by 2 million tons, even then we would still have a world stocks to use ratio of approximately 8 months, 8 or 9 months, which means even through 15-16 we're going to have a very large overhang of supply on the world market. And that inevitably means further pressure on prices. So now in that context, I want to turn to India. This is a chart from 304 on the international cotton season, August to July. It shows what's been happening with production in India rising, mill use also rising, but production greater than mill use, and so India has been a significant exporter. Again, even if production in India drops substantially in 2015-16, even if mill use in India continues to rise, India is still going to have an exportable surplus. And since the United States is no longer supporting prices with its program, and China is now liquidating its reserve, it's no longer supporting prices through its program, if CCI, Mr. Misra, if, I emphasize the condition there, if CCI expects to support prices at the MSPs, I believe it would have to buy about 2.5 million metric tons of cotton and hold it in order to do so. Again, it's not just the Indian situation that CCI now has to balance. because India is becoming the reserve cotton supplier to the world. The United States is no longer holding stocks. China is liquidating its reserve. And if India is going to keep international prices high enough so that domestic prices in India are supported at the MSPs, then simple arithmetic suggests that India is going to have to not only buy up its own surplus, shown by the bottom half of that bar, it's going to have to buy up enough cotton off the world market to soak up a large part of the world surplus. This chart from 04-05 shows CCI activity each year. Its last year of major operations was 2008-9, when it bought about 1.5 million tons of cotton. The Indian surplus alone is 1.2 million metric tons this year, and again, accounting for the fact that China is now liquidating its reserve, then India would have to also buy up part of the world surplus. Again, I emphasize the conditional. I'm not suggesting that India should do that. I believe that distortions beget more distortions, and the government of India certainly has the market power to do this, but it would result in a longer period of adjustment for the world cotton market. Nevertheless, it certainly has the power to do it if it wishes to. So I'm not suggesting India should do it, and I'm not forecasting that India will do it. I'm just saying that the U.S. is no longer supporting prices, China is no longer supporting prices. If India wishes to defend the MSPs, it would have to buy about 2.5 million metric tons. And not just buy and sell to somebody else, but buy and store around 2.5 million metric tons for at least 2 years if it was going to try to fulfill that MSP mandate. That is would be a Herculean task for CCI to accomplish that. Again, it's an honor to be on this panel with Ray and Joseph Sette. Thank you, Mr. Visual, for your time.
Thank you very much. With the question and answer session, I would request my colleague panelist, Jose Sette, and Mr. Ray Butler to kindly join the dais. And I would request the audience, as we have a very excellent and educative session wherein all the three experts of the cotton trade have expressed their views about world cotton scenario, China's status, average price, as well as what future outlook. So I would welcome the question and answer session now, please. Thank you.
This question is not to the panel but to the chairman himself. Terry said that perhaps India would be going in for 2.5 million. Does the government, or let us say as the CMD or CCI, do you subscribe to his view?
To answer this question, I will go back to last bigger MSP, which was happened in the year 2008-9, wherein India could intervene to the extent of about 1/3 of the cotton with the NAFED and other agencies. So this time also, because a basic reason in that year was the MSP in India was improved up to 40% to 50%, which is not the situation as on date. The intervention of CCI this year only because of price crash down due to China's heavy stocks. That is the reason. So I presume that yes, it may be anywhere between 1 to 2 million. In terms of million ton, I can say yes, it may be anywhere between 1 million tons to 2. And CCI, along with other agencies, is very much ready to do the
MSP operations. The only thing, the focus in India is to ensure remunerative price to farmers. Since we are a surplus country, as per my perception, we don't have any intention to keep the cotton for a longer run. So along with the purchase, we have to see the government policy is to liquidate it also during or 1 or 2 months later in the season. Thank you.
Hi Terry, this is Manik here from Brentford. My question is for Mr. Terry Townsend. You mentioned that in your estimate, China will have roughly 6 million tons of cotton by end of 2017, marking year ending 2016-17. In case that does come to pass, the stocks as of end of 2017 would at least be 4 years old, if not more. Do you expect, I'm sure there's going to be a question on the spinnability or usability of a 5-year-old stock. Do you think that the government in the next 3 or 4 years may resort to something what CCI does in India, just not to support the price, but just to recycle its own stocks to make it more usable at the end of 2017? Do you foresee a program like that in the next 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, thank you. Of course it will. The government of China is not only liquidating its reserve, it is also rotating its reserve. So it will be selling cotton out of the reserve, but buying other cotton in, with net reductions from 10 or 11 million tons currently to 5 or 6 million tons over the next several years. As Ray pointed out, there are questions about the quality of the cotton in the reserve now, but the reserve managers in China are certainly bright enough to know that they have to be continuously rotating that stock, and in addition to liquidating the stock on a net basis. So surely they'll be doing that.
Hello sir, my question is for Jose Sete. This is Manish Daga from the Cotton Guru. Sir, you mentioned regarding the opportunity for India in increasing the per capita consumption. We know that the per capita consumption in India is about 4.5 kg against 18 kg in China and plus 35 kg in the US. So please give some suggestions how we can do that.
Well, I think all of you are much closer to the Indian market than I am, and probably have better ideas. But I think part of it has to come through economic growth and change in infrastructure, especially. You joined us in Thessaloniki for our recent plenary, and I think one of the presentations there, which was interesting, showed the importance of things like basic sanitation for cotton consumption. When people have access to showers, let's say, to washing machines, they feel more disposed to having more clothes, to consuming more cotton. So I see that the Modi government has a very strong emphasis on this question of promoting the infrastructure of in India in general. So I think that is part of the solution, and so you have to have the underlying conditions right for growth. But the other part, I think, is generic promotion does work. We have examples from the US, especially in cotton, but in other commodities, also successful generic promotion campaigns. But they have to be tailored to the conditions of the country. And that is why I said I'm very much looking forward to, I think it's this afternoon's session on promotion, which I hope will advance this issue. Thank you.
Sir, just one small suggestion. I request you to take up this mission in the IFCP of increasing the consumption in India.
Sorry, I didn't understand you.
You take up this as a mission in the IFCP, which is the subcommittee of the ICAP.
Yes, we work closely with the IFCP. The IFCP, for those who don't know, it is the International Forum for Cotton Promotion, and it is this is a very low budget program, but one of the objectives of the IFCP is to show examples from one country that can be replicated in others, and especially in developing the internal markets of the cotton producing countries. So the IFCP is an important component of this strategy.
Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate all the speakers. Since I have been throughout my life in cotton research, as I'm Dr. M.S. Karan, former director of the Central Institute for Cotton Research, and after retirement also working on cotton. I would like to ask one of the very important point in relation with your production, consumption, and its competition with the synthetic fiber. When you try to see all the situations, if you find out the present situations of the country-wise, and you have already informed about the USA, China, and they are going back, and their situation is little bad. Now India is the country where we have a maximum hope by increasing the productivity per unit area, so that we can help the farmers to decrease the cost of cultivation. I tell you, sir, the present situation in the whole world are facing the two problems. Number one, the cost of cultivation of cotton. And USA and they are especially giving lot of grants to the farmers. But the point which I like to emphasize here, that the production, productivity of crop at the low cost, and yes, how we can promote the cotton. These are the ways to promote the cotton, to decrease the cost of cultivation. Number two, there is to promote its uses. There are so many uses of cotton which are not being taken care till today. And geo and so many other uses like stock, and so that we can increase our sort of income from the cotton trade. So what I would like to tell you, there is a need to intensify the research by combining all sort of factors, production, they meant to say productivity, as well as its consumption, and its sort of a competition, to avoid the competition from the synthetic fiber. So that I fully agree with you that there is a need to have a campaign or a aggressive sort of a mission mode programs are to be taken, and at the country level are to be identified, and so that, and also along with that we should fix the targets that so much has to be done. So there is a need to have one committee with the textile, agriculture and the researcher, and so that they can very well focus the future of cotton. Otherwise, what you have shown here, whether I know both of my good speakers, and then if you have shown China and USA, then you have shown such a gloomy picture. then it means tomorrow nobody going to sow the cotton. And the cotton trade and everything will go in a bad shape. That we have to be very aggressive in redesigning the programs. Thank you very much. I just to give my views on cotton, and since I've been since 50 years in cotton research program. Thank you.
I'm not sure there was a question, I think that was a statement. But just an observation on cotton promotion. I think there's another issue which I regard as a challenge for India, and that's to do with standards. I know that CAI has worked very hard to develop standards. Unfortunately, these are not accepted by the domestic industry, not used as far as I can tell by the domestic industry. And therefore it makes it very difficult for those standards to be applied internationally. I know that CAI recently submitted those standards to the ICA. I'm not sure where that's up to. But it seems to me that getting a set of standards that are accepted, that define quality, is a prerequisite for succeeding in enhancing Indian cotton's value. And at the same time, I think what we heard this morning about promoting Subin as a brand is a very good step, but I think that there's more that can be done, because if you go to consuming markets, Indian cotton is Shankar. And I know if Shankar doesn't exist as a variety, but as a brand name, it's very powerful. And I think that more effort could be done to promote Indian cotton using brand names of that sort. So I think there are two things: quality aspects, which can be described technically, and brand names that could be promoted to enhance the value of Indian cotton. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think we will end the question and answer session now. Okay, please.
One last single question, sir. My name is Shahid, I'm from Pakistan. My question is that the cost of producing fiber is declining. I mean, because of the oil, raw materials are declining and the machines are more efficient. Whereas the cost of growing cotton is increasing. And how, in your opinion, there is going to be a correlation of prices vis-a-vis fiber? Is the difference is going to increase, and this increase is further going to discourage the consumption. And also in light of this exorbitant stock that we are carrying at present, would this not, this fiber cotton prices being still higher as vis-a-vis fiber prices, and fiber prices further under pressure because the oil is going down? So how do you see, what effect it would have on the prices? Whereas, one of you mentioned that, every price of the season would be around 75 cents. This is something, I'm a little confused about.
Your question is from whom of us?
All of you should remember, like all the panel, the speakers should, throw some light on it.
Whatever I could understand, that is your question is related to reduce the cost, particularly.
No, I'm asking the correlation between the prices, because fiber cost is declining. Cost of producing fiber is declining, whereas cost of producing cotton is perhaps increasing. And nobody has shown us any data on the cost factor of cotton production. So, this is something very interesting, because cost of growing cotton will, is higher and will keep growing higher. And we have an inventory. And polyester fiber, there is no inventory. It's, people can shut their plants. They will not carry the inventory. So, and then when the oil comes down, they will, reduce the prices further. What impact is going to have on the cotton prices in light of polyester prices going down further and the stock that we have? Especially in light of, one of you mentioning that price would be, the average price for the season would be around 75 cents.
Well, in terms of the relationship between the cost of production and the price received for cotton prices are going to go down because the supply of cotton is greater than the demand for cotton. It means that over a the next several years, many farmers are going to lose money. Some of them will choose to exit the industry, and that is just an inevitable process that's going to happen. The decline in prices will eventually result in increased consumption, and then prices will eventually respond to that. The last period that was similar to the current situation, the world had a large government reserve, was in the 1980s. At that time it was the United States. When the U.S. decided to abandon its policy, just as China is now, it took 3 years for prices to recover to their former level. So that process of declining prices, farmers losing money, and some farmers going out of business, thus reducing cotton production, is inevitable. The relationship between polyester prices and cotton prices is a complex one. As Ray pointed out, polyester prices have also been declining in recent months. There's as yet no evidence that textile mills are resurging back to cotton use around the world, although some of that may occur in the future. But the world cotton industry, the world fiber industry, is highly competitive, and cotton has to just has to understand that competitive reality, and it's going to have to find its way between the levels of consumer demand and levels of competing fiber prices. I'm not sure if that is directly what you're getting at, but you know, the bottom line is the market doesn't care what it costs to produce cotton. We've got too much cotton, prices are going to go down.
Ladies and gentlemen, now we are ending the question and answer session. We are arranging a screen on stage so that speakers on stage can also see the presentations. Inconvenience caused is regretted. Now it is time, ladies and gentlemen, for a short and sweet tea break of 15 minutes. Thank you so much. Request everyone to kindly reassemble in the hall for the third session of the day. Our esteemed speakers are already there on stage. Kindly reassemble in the hall. Thank you so much. Request everyone to kindly reassemble in the hall for the next session of the day. Our esteemed speakers are already there on stage. Thank you so much. Dr. S.K. Chattopadhyay to all of you. Dr. Chattopadhyay is presently the principal scientist and head of the Mechanical Processing Division at CIRCOT. Prior to that, he was officiating as the director of Central Institute for Research on Cotton Technology, Mumbai. Under his leadership, in July 2013, the CIRCOT ZTN BPD unit was awarded Best Performing NAIP Business Planning and Development Unit for Technology Commercialization at the Agri-Tech Investors Meet 2013 held at New Delhi. Besides, CIRCOT achieved a 98% score for annual achievements in results framework documents consecutively for 2012 to 2013 and 2013 to 2014 as per the evaluation methodology prescribed by the Performance Management Division, Cabinet Secretariat, Government of India, New Delhi. Dr. Chattopadhyay has 36 years of industrial and research experience in the mechanical processing of textiles. His field of research is post-harvest processing and blending of fibers, small sample spinning and modern spinning systems, utilization and functionalization of textiles using bioresources, technical textiles and composites. I would now like to ask Dr. Chattopadhyay to please take over. Thank you so much.
Kind introduction. I welcome all in this session, which is session on business on R&D on cotton, and I think it is a very important session. I must be thankful to the organizer, Cotton Association of India, for keeping this session ahead of this seminar. Normally in all such seminar, R&D is discussed at the end of the seminar, but the organizer has placed a lot of importance on R&D and cotton. And besides that, organizer has invited 3 speakers who are internationally known, and they will be presenting their views and what is the R&D scenario in cotton in the few minutes within you. To set the ball running for this session, I have, as a user of cotton and being a spinner of cotton, I have some points to be placed before these speakers and also before the audience. These are that the cotton, of course, the cotton breeding or cotton development main priority is the production, and this is very crucial because the land availability is reducing, water requirement also is increasing, and of course the farmer, who is the first stakeholder in the value chain, he is getting less and less income as the cost of production is increasing. So productivity raising in cotton is a very important thing, and mostly the speakers will also cover in their lectures these aspects, how to raise the productivity of cotton, particularly in the Indian context. Besides that, I will suggest that we also look forward towards the quality aspects of the cotton, and it should be, quality should be concurrent along with the productivity of the cotton, and factors that contribute productivity may also contribute the improving the quality, and particularly we are looking forward for the strength of the cotton. In the Indian context, we are requiring more high strength cotton, as our spinning industry is the best in the world. You can imagine that what in 65 carding machine was worked with 5 kg per hour production. Now it is 40 times speed it is working, 200 kg per hour. Similarly, ring frame, which you are working at a very slow speed, today it is working at 25 meter per minute speed, and rotor spinning another 10 times higher speed of 250,000 speed. And air jet spinning has also made this venture into the Indian spinning scenario, and a lot of spinners are also testing their Indian cotton on air jet spinning system, which is running about another 2.8 times higher speed, that is 450 meter per minute. In this context, the cotton strength become very important, particularly what is more important in scientifically is the work of rupture of the cotton, that is the cotton strength multiplied by the cotton elongation property. So how far we can improve these properties. The other factor is that Indian scenario, the cotton picking is going to be shortly through mechanical means. We are picking by hand, but it is going to be shortly by mechanical means due to the shortage of labor. And in that context, how much cleaning we will do at the field level after the picking or after the ginning, and how much we leave for the spinning mill. That ratio is to be worked out, considering that the spinning mill has invested, Indian spinning mill has invested a lot of money on, invested on the cleaning system. So what are the factors of cleaning which are easy to clean cotton? And particularly in the morning variety was discussed is the Sujata, which was very easy to clean during the mechanical operation. We have found it. So in this context, as the time is running out, the quality parameters also is to be looked into through the bidding program, and we expect the speakers to touch upon the quality parameters which are going to be crucial for the sustainability of the cotton. And we have 3 distinguished speakers with us. first speaker is Dr. Kesav Kanti. He is well known in India and also internationally. He is presently the director of the Central Institute of Cotton Research. He is a gold medalist in PhD from Indian Agricultural Research Institute, New Delhi, and he is known for his diagnostic kit to detect the cotton, detect biotech cotton and insecticide resistance, and he is a National Academy Fellow of the National Academy of Agricultural Research, and he has bagged several national awards apart from the international ICSA award for 2009. He has a number of publications, both national and international level. So I request Dr. Kesav Kanti to present his paper. And all the papers, the question and answer session will follow after the presentation by all the speakers. Dr. Kanti.